Welcome to episode 91 of Sport SA Daily Diary. Today we chatted to a young man who wanted to become a world champion bodyboarder and has achieved it. South Africa's Tristan Roberts. Afternoon, Tristan. How are you doing today?
Hey, Adam. How? All good. All good here in Johannesburg.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Joburg is not your normal home. You're from Onrus in Hermanus, and you've had
Yeah,
quite an experience over the last few weeks. Tell us a bit about what's
yeah,
been going on in your life.
yeah, exactly. I was in Portugal for training. I arrived there in February and I was meant to stay there till March. And then I got caught up with the whole pandemic thing and couldn't get a ticket out of Portugal. And finally got one out in June, June 12th, I was meant to leave. And yeah, it was just a nightmare. I flew to Frankfurt, ended up being overbooked on a flight there. So got put up in a hotel for a night. Then the plane that was meant to leave that day, actually the door broke on the plane. So that flight couldn't take off either. So about 600 of us ended up going to a hotel through SAA that put us in a place in Frankfurt. And here the next day I got into a flight with KLM to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam I got a flight to Johannesburg. So yeah, it's just been a chaotic last 2 weeks with very few communication, and yeah, it's been stressful.
Yeah, I'm sure. I suppose the good thing is that you're home. Tell us on the flight. I presume they don't sort of book every seat. There must be a gap between passengers.
That's the thing. I thought that was the case on the first flight, but I think they just had so many people wanting to get home that I don't know if their rules were different. But then, like the flight I caught from Amsterdam to Johannesburg was really empty, which was kind of heartbreaking to see because there's still, I've heard, 45 people still stuck in Frankfurt. So not everyone's been able to get out of there yet. So I'm one of the lucky few that managed to get on the plane to get here. But I think a lot of them struggled because they didn't have Schengen visas, so they couldn't fly to Amsterdam in order to get here. So yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare, man. And yeah, my flight was super empty on the way here. Just had like a full row to myself and just, yeah, living the dream.
I suppose that's a benefit. And then you
Yeah.
landed in Joburg, and what, did they just sort of bus you all to the hotel where you are?
Yeah, so it's quite a crazy process when I got to Johannesburg. It was like full, like the police were all there, like surrounding the bus. They put us on a bus, put all our luggage on the bus, and then escorted us from the airport to the hotel. It like felt like we were criminals, you know. Yeah, just at 2 a.m. in the morning, it was like really cold in Johannesburg, like negative degrees for sure. So yeah, it was a big shock to the immune system, and just to see all the lights flashing around you is really crazy. It's definitely the first time I've been escorted, and was a really weird feeling.
Well, let's hope it's the last. And then you
Yeah,
stuck at that hotel for a couple of days, and then back home.
yeah, 7 days I'm here, and then I get tested, then hopefully I'm negative. And then they release you within 48 hours, and I get another flight to Cape Town, and then drive from there to Honors.
And obviously, you're not allowed out of the hotel, or I mean,
Not allowed out of the hotel room at all. Like,
out
you're
of the
in the
hotel
hotel
room.
room. Yeah, man. So you're in the room. They come and knock on the door to give you food. They leave the food at the door. You put on your mask. You go outside, collect your food, and then you just get back into your prison cell, I like to call it. You sit here
Jeepers.
for, yeah, it's hectic. The nurse comes around every now and then, takes your temperature, and that's about it.
And I mean, I take it's fully paid for. You don't have to cover the cost
Yeah.
for
So
accommodation.
yeah, the government does pay for the quarantine, so that's definitely been a big help, because staying in this hotel for 10 days would have been rather expensive.
I'm sure. Well,
Yeah,
we hope you're going to get home soon, and you can get on with your life, because I mean it's just crazy.
yeah, it's
Um,
gonna be good to just get into routine back home, and just get back to training and enjoying the ocean again. For sure.
Absolutely. So 2020 hasn't been the best year, but 2019 was a massive year for you, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But Tristan, tell us,
Yeah.
how did you get into the sport of bodyboarding?
Yeah, so I was born in Cape Town, and at age 6 we started going to Amanus because we had a holiday house there. So we'd go every weekend to the holiday house, and then my brother met some guys that were bodyboarding, and he started, and then I just started tagging along with them when I was really young, and then we ended up moving up to Amanus when I was 7, and yeah, bodyboarding was sort of the sport everyone was doing around there, so I just joined the pack and followed along and started falling in love with it. And yeah, that's when it all started.
And obviously, there's a difference between bodyboarding and surfing. I mean, it's self-explanatory. But is there a
Yeah,
bit of a rift between surfers and bodyboarders, or is it all sort of
I
one
think,
community?
yeah, the thing is, I think back in the day, the older generations, the bodyboarders and surfers never got along. It was always like a massive rivalry between the two of them. And it was always just, heat between surfing and bodyboarding. But since I think the new generation has just learned how ridiculous that is. I have a lot of good surfing friends, and we all hang out and we all charge waves together. But I think there's still that stigma attached to it with the older generation. You can sort of feel the vibe when there's an older generation out in the water, and it's very weird. I don't understand it, but it's just super egotistic. And I think in a few years you won't even have that anymore. It'll just be a clean slate, and bodyboarders and surfers will all get along wherever they are.
Oh, let's hope so. And do you surf,
Yeah.
or do you only bodyboard?
I mean, I surf every now and then if the waves are really small. But the thing is, with bodyboarding or surfing, whichever sport you want to do, if you want to compete against the world's best, you sort of have to be 100% into it, So I train bodyboarding in all conditions. So yeah, I've just been super dedicated to bodyboarding my whole life.
And I did a bit of research on you before the interview, and one thing I picked up was you grew up with some hardcore guys. Tell us a bit about
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, Adam, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Sorry, I'm not sure. I'm just seeing your screen now. I got a phone call that interrupted that. Sorry. Yeah, so growing up in Honors, they were a tough bunch of guys, and they were really, yeah, I think in one way, when I was younger, I used to be super scared of them, and kind of there was just a big Grom initiation thing where growing up you would just get initiated by the older guys, and yeah, it's like we had some crazy initiation where we'd have to run across the beach naked, just embarrassing the youth and putting them in their place. That's basically what it was all about. And it was really good. Now that I look back at it, it humbled the whole generation to come out of Honors, and I think it taught us a lot of respect for our elders. And yes, if now that I look about it, I'm all for it. I think a lot of teenagers nowadays just get things a little too easy, and yeah, I think when we grew up, it was still really hard on us, and yeah, I enjoyed it. But those guys are definitely some of my biggest inspiration now, just because they kept me in the water and made sure I stayed clean from all sorts of drugs and alcohol, and they were sort of the biggest driving force behind my career when I was young, keeping me on the straight and narrow. So they were really hard on us, but in the end of the day, I think it was really good for me.
Okay. And when did you start to realize that you were actually pretty good at this, and there was a future potential?
Yeah, so I mean, I started competing in 2009, just in the local events. You know, sorry about that. I don't know. I keep getting all these calls. I don't know who's trying to call me, but yeah. So I started competing in 2009, and then yeah, I started doing nationals in 2009. In 2012, I was the under 15 national champion and the pro division champion. So it was the first I was the first guy to ever do that. And then, yeah, from then I got selected for the Springbok team, where I went to Venezuela to compete there. And then, yeah, I found my big sponsor when I was in Venezuela, which is Pride Bodyboards. It's a French company. And they sort of just kept me in the loop. And since then, so I finished school, and straight after school, I had the support to go straight onto tour. So it was always in the back of the mind that this is what I was going to do full time straight after school, you know. So my school time was basically just trying to do the best I could at school and prepare as well as I could for the world tour.
And that first trip to Venezuela, I mean, it wasn't just sort of the first time you represented South Africa. You actually came second in the junior division, which is pretty impressive for your first international experience.
Yeah, it was the first time I went overseas too, and yeah, it was a great experience for me. It was actually like the World Games for the junior division was always like, it ended up being my biggest rivalry, because I ended up winning the pro division in 2014, but I still came second in the junior division. Like, I don't know what it was, but there was just something that every time in the final heat, something would happen. And I think it was just a mental thing where I would just not be myself, and I could never win that junior title, which is something that still kills me to this day. But I ended up winning the pro division title. So I think at the end of the day, I was better off winning the pro title.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's
Yeah.
brilliantly done. And then sort of you progressed along the circuit, but in 2016, unfortunately, your dad passed away. How did that affect you and your competing?
Yeah, I think, man, I think I was in Canary Islands at the time when my mom gave me the call. And I think I was really good. It was really good that I was there in a way, just because I could sort of distance myself from everyone, and just, you know, I was only 19 years old in another country, and yeah, hearing that news was pretty devastating. But at the same time, the locals in the Canaries really helped me, and I think having them around where they didn't really feel sorry for me because they didn't really know me too well. I just had to get on with things, you know, and just keep surfing, keep training. And yeah, it's still like one of the most memorable trips I've ever done, where, you know, the Canarians really looked after me, and they will always be a big part of my life just for that, as, you know, it was a big moment in my life. But yeah, I was actually, in one way, I think I was phoning my mom, and I was trying to decide if I should come home or just spend a couple of days there to try and clear my head. And she advised me that I just stay over there and just keep surfing, as she knew how much that trip meant to me. And at the end of the day, it really worked. It worked out in my favor. And now every time I go back to the Canary Islands, it's just such a good feeling about it, you know. And now it's also the place where I won my first world title. So it's, to me, the Canary Islands, whenever I go to visit, it's almost like a homely feeling, you know. And yeah, it's been a massive thing in my career for sure.
And I mean, growing up through this time, there were quite a few guys that you looked up to. Was Andre Botha sort of the biggest influence on your career?
Sorry about this. This is just my order coming in from Checkers.
No problem.
Hi there. I'm good, thanks. And you? Yes, I am. From Checkers. Okay. Thank you. Bye. Yeah, so this is my every now and then daily routine is just to order some supplies, some fruit and things from Checkers just to have in the room, because the meals are good, but, you know, I just like to get some extra things where I can. So they'll be delivering to me real soon.
No problem, mate. It sort of adds to the flavor of your experience.
Yeah. Exactly. And like, I wouldn't be surprised if the nurse comes around just now to take my fever as well. But it's all good.
Well, add it all to the video.
Yeah.
And,
sorry, where were we?
Yeah, we were chatting about sort of influences in your career. Was Andre Botha sort of the biggest influence in your career, or was it Jared Houston?
The thing is with Andre is I grew up you know, Andre Boerder was world champion in the late 90s. That was when I was born. So I sort of missed the whole Andre Boerder era, but you know, he was definitely the biggest icon to come out of South Africa while I was growing up, you know. Oh, Andre Boerder was world champion when he was 17. So in my eyes, like, you know, he proved that you were able to do it, you know. And yeah, and I've always just been inspired by his ability to ride waves, and just how he's just a fitness freak, man. Like, his endurance is just unbelievable, and he's a warrior in the ocean. And yeah, that's something that's always inspiring to just watch. But yeah, I think in my career, it was more like Jared Houston and Mark McCarthy, who were still competing while I started the world tour. So those were the guys and Sasha Specker too. They were showing me the ropes while I was going on tour, and they were sort of doing, I know Jared still competes, but Mark McCarthy did his last year when I did my first year on tour. So yeah, he's always been there to show me the ropes and help me.
And I mean, are they sort of friendly between you guys?
Super
I mean,
friendly.
you're still competitors at the end of the day.
Yeah. Sorry, Adam, they get just at the door. I'm just going to grab that parcel quick and I'll be right back.
Go for it, mate.
Sorry about that. I hope that's the last interruption.
Yeah, no problem, mate. So I was just asking, sort of, is it not quite competitive amongst you? The guys still happy to show you the ropes and give you some skill?
Exactly, and I think that's the cool thing about bodyboarding too, is that guys are really willing to help, you know, and show you the ropes. Obviously, when they're competing in the water, then it's all competition. But when it comes to land, everyone's friends, and it's a good vibe on the beach. And yeah, without those guys, it would have been really difficult in my career to know exactly how and what to do. So yeah, I definitely do thank them.
And then 2016 was your first full year on tour, and you ended up 8th. I mean, that's not too bad for your sort of rookie year.
Exactly. Yeah, and I had to qualify for the tour that year too. So you'd start off in trials, and there were so many guys in the trials, and then you would only get, so at each event there would be, so say about 100 guys that rock up to the trials to compete for the top 8 spots, who then join the top 24 who have already qualified from the year before. So then it's the top 32 that end up competing at each event. So at each event, I had to qualify in the top 8 and then start competing with the top 24. So I was surfing so many heats at each event. Yeah, and it was crazy because I think I was so motivated, like finishing school and so ready for the tour, that even though I had such a good result, and I think back about it now and like how much of a good result it was, but at the time I was so disappointed because I just had this whole thing about me, like I wanted to win the world tour, like, and that yeah, I didn't end up doing that. So it was just like, you know, just an eager teenager who was just like ready to, you know, conquer everything, and I was a bit over my head for sure, but at the end of the day, I don't think it was a very bad thing, and I've learned through that and had to accept, because in the sport you lose a lot more than you win, yeah, because you're dealing with so many factors. You're dealing with the ocean, and it's like, you know, sometimes someone just gets better waves than you do, and that's not in you can't do much about it. So yeah, in the sport you definitely do lose a lot more than you win, and it's not a game that's so structured like rugby or, you know, cricket or whatever sport where it's just up to you and another opponent. So yeah, I've had to learn a lot about losing and accepting loss and bouncing back from that, because I think in 2016 was the first time I felt really beat up, and it was the most ridiculous thing to feel beat up, because I did really well, you know. Yeah, I think now I've matured a bit more, and I've learned how to lose, and I've learned how to win. So yeah, it's all good now.
Tristan, we had a chat with Roland Skuman a few days ago, and one of his points, or the one thing he mentioned, was he was his biggest critic, which
Yeah,
I found sort of it's quite a common thread amongst top sportsmen. Is that the same with
for
you? Because it's certainly coming across like it.
yeah, exactly. I've always been really hard on myself, and especially, and I think at some point, you know, it can at some point be detrimental to your career too. You know, you've got to learn how to control that, because I think a lot of athletes experience burnout while growing up. It's just where they dedicate too much time to their craft and don't find a balance, and you know, end up not getting the results they want quick enough, and they end up giving up too soon. You know, and I think that's something that could have happened to me real easily if I didn't learn how to lose. You know, just to accept the fact that I've lost, and you know, just try and learn from every experience. I think that's the biggest thing. Is I was just getting so annoyed because people always, and I think maybe seeing that Andre Buddha won a world title so young too, you know, and it made it seem like it was achievable, and the fact that I wasn't achieving that was hard for me to accept. So yeah, I think, yeah, man, I think I was just too hard on myself, and I think that actually made me achieve less than what I would have if I was just, you know, more relaxed and more calculated while competing.
Right, that is such a common thread that, you know, during these interviews that sportsmen have been saying, is the fact that they were
Yeah,
so hard on themselves actually worked detrimentally, not positively, towards their career. And once they'd learned
yeah,
that point, they actually started to relax and perform better.
yeah, exactly. And I think as well, like even last year when I won the world title, I was in a complete different mind space while like competing. I was just, you know, I was just going to take it all as it comes. I remember doing an interview in the beginning of the year where someone said I was ready to win a world title, and I was just saying, like, yeah, maybe I'm ready, but I'm not putting any pressure on winning a world title this year. I just want to go out and compete and enjoy myself. And it seemed to, I just had a lot less stress on myself, like throughout the year of competing. And I think that worked wonderfully. So it's definitely something I'd look into while implementing in the future when competing, is just to try and keep doing what you're doing while you're training, and just, you know, enjoy the process. Don't rush anything. If you do the long hours, it's going to pay off at some point. You know, you just got to persevere and push through all those tough moments.
So let's talk about 2019 and the big year for you. It started
Yeah,
off well in Brazil. You won Brazil. Then you
yeah.
came third in Chile. Then not too well. Take us through that the whole season and
So
the Canary Islands finish.
yeah, so what happened to me is that in Brazil, I won the first event on tour, and then I went on to Chile, and the first event in Chile, I ended up coming third. But in my semi-final, I was really on a good roll. I was already seeing myself in a final. And then I had a paddle interference with the other competitor who actually so in other words, that means so whoever has priority, right? Say I have priority and you're in the heat with me and you go on the same wave I went on, you get disqualified because I had priority to choose whatever wave I wanted to. So basically I started off the heat with a 10-point ride. It was like the best ride I could possibly start with. And the other rider started manipulating me into pretending he's going or he's not going, pretending he's going or he's not going. And my mind just started going like, okay, well, I need to get a backup score because otherwise I only have a total of 10, you know? And the heat total out of 20, whoever has the highest heat total out of 20 will advance through the heat. And then, yeah, he was just like playing this game with me where I just didn't know if he was going to go or not, didn't know if he was going to go. Eventually he pretended like he was going to go left. So I went right, and then he went right as well and went behind me and basically got a paddle interference on me. And it's just that split second of just not watching your opponent close enough, and they can use the rules against you. And that was just a massive blow to me. I was just super angry after that, because I basically got defeated by the rules, you know, not by someone's potential to beat me. So it was really hard for me to come back from that. I went through the whole of like South America just super upset about the result, knowing that like how far in the lead it would have got me if I had made the final in that competition. And it felt like I'd already lost the world title, and I was struggling to bounce back from that incident. And then I went on through Chile, and I just had this thing in the back of my head like the whole time through competing. And I think the energy, I just drained myself from all the positive energy I had, you know, which is really bad in competing. You don't want to be angry when competing at all. So I went through that, and then didn't get the results I needed in Chile. Like came back to South Africa, had a really good surf trip here. Went up to Namibia. It was really amazing. Got really good waves, just training, and went off to Australia after that. And then, like just didn't get the results again in Australia. And I was like, okay, well, you've basically kissed the world title goodbye this year, you know, like just forget about it. We'll focus on it next year. Like that was already my thought. Went to Portugal, didn't get a good result there either. And because I had a first, a third, and a fifth in South America, it left me with one shot in the Canary Islands, but I had to win the entire event. And the guys that were ahead of me would have to lose before the quarterfinals. So I initially thought I didn't have a shot. So I went to Canary Islands thinking like, oh, you don't have a shot at the world title anymore. It's okay. And then the event promoters came to me and they're like, hey, you have a shot at the world title this year. You just have to win the event. So I was like, okay, it's a shot, but it's not really an opportunity. You know, it's like, like competing Canary Islands is, you know, to me, it's like the biggest stage of bodyboarding, where it's just the wave is just built for a bodyboard and people are just going so crazy. It's the biggest. Yes, big waves and just super powerful, and it's just a skate park for bodyboards. So to beat people there, it's really a tough task, because everyone's really pushing the limits. So for me, it's always been a dream event to win. And knowing that I couldn't make one mistake throughout the whole event is like, if I lost one heat, I was losing the world title, you know. So in the beginning, I didn't think I had a shot. I was just cruising through. I was making heats. And then I landed up in the quarterfinals, and I was like, wow, okay, well, now the shot's real. And then the other guys lost, and I was like, okay, well, now the shot's really real. You know, I just need to win 2 more heats, and then, you know, I'm there. So the day before the final day, I just couldn't even eat. Couldn't drink. I was just like super stressed, you know, like my stomach just felt like it was in the biggest knot. I was trying to eat, just feeling so nauseous. Couldn't sleep the night before the final. And I was just like, I woke up the next day and I was super tired. Like, I was just like, how are you meant to compete? You know, you have no energy, you can't eat. And then I spoke to Jeff Hubbard, who's a Hawaiian bodyboarder, and he's multiple world champion too. And I was like, man, like I couldn't sleep last night. And just like, and he was like, if you did sleep, then something's wrong, because, you know, everyone's just as nervous as you are. And I guarantee you, no one got sleep last night. So you're fine. You're all good. So I was like, okay, that made me feel a bit better about myself. And it was massive the morning. They put the event on hold. So I went back to the house. I had to wait until lunchtime, just super nervous, like trying to drink little bits of water where I can. And then just all unraveled from there. I made the quarterfinal heats, made the semifinal, and then I was in the final with Amaury Laverne, who's like, in the last 5 years, I think he's won like 3 titles there. So he lives there, and he's just like, he knows the wave out the back of his hand. You know, it's impossible to beat that local knowledge. So yeah, and I had to win the entire event. So even though I made it that far to the final, if I had lost in the final, I wouldn't have been world champion. You know, so I just thought like he was gonna rip the rug straight under my feet, and that was it. You know, so yeah, and the last 5 minutes of the heat were the most intense in my life. Just felt like the longest 5 minutes ever, because I was in the lead and just wanting time to count down without more waves coming. And yeah, and then I was crowned world champion, and it was an incredible feeling, man. It's just like all those emotions you've bottled up for like the whole year through competing, and just the last few days of stress, and you know, everything just releases out your body, and it's like I could hardly walk. I just felt so, you know, so drained from energy, but also just so happy that I could just lay down on the floor and cry. You know, it's just like, yeah, it's an incredible feeling, incredible.
And do they play the national anthem when they hand over the world championship to you?
So at there they don't, but they normally have a award ceremony where it's like a more formal event afterwards where they do. But yeah, at the time it's just too much. The crowd's just too crazy, and it's just, yeah, it's just the whole bunch of celebration. You know, people just screaming and going nuts. Yeah, it was incredible.
I'm sure you didn't sleep that night either.
Yeah, actually I did sleep well, because I was so tired, and all I wanted to do was just have like a good meal with all my mates. So we just went to this eat as much as you can buffet, and I was just like, just ate as much as I could there, and I was just so tired and so full that it just made it really easy to sleep. But yeah, my phone was just going crazy, as you can imagine. So it's just putting that phone off, but then also so excited to read everything, you know. So I mean, I think that excitement like wakes you up at like 5 a.m. the next morning, and you're on your phone, and you're just like speaking to family and friends, and, you know, everything on social media. I think, yeah, it's really hard to sleep while you know all that's waiting for you the next day.
Oh, no, I'm sure. And Tristan, obviously it's not hugely, you don't get massive financial support from any sort of federations in South Africa. Do you feel
No,
that you got the due sort of respect and acknowledgement for being crowned a world champion?
the thing is, I think in my hometown, definitely. I think in Amanus, they did a really good welcoming home thing for me, where, you know, all the municipality and the police really like acknowledged my achievement and put massive banners up for me in the town. So I think in my hometown, that was the most incredible feeling to come back to, where it was just like, you know, it felt like everyone was waiting for me. And I did like a massive march, like a march through the town, and it was really cool. So I think in that sense, that really helped me acknowledge the achievement. But I think in the bigger picture, I did like a couple newspaper interviews and some news channels, but it never seems to really get to where you want it to go. You know, it never really gets to government recognition or anything big that could help the sport in drastic ways. So I think in that sense, it's a little disappointing, you know, and it's difficult to get financial backing out of South Africa. All my sponsors are all European, like from France mostly. That's mostly where I get all my financial backing from. So yeah, it's really hard to make it in bodyboarding from South Africa.
Which, I mean, it's a point that I've discussed with a few athletes over the last few weeks. You're a world champion. You should get the similar recognition to what the Springboks got for winning the Rugby World Cup, you know, in Japan.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And it is unfortunately skewed to the big three sports, but I think it is something that South African sport in general needs to look at, because, you know, you are the best in the world in what you do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to me, it's just always been like, even when I competed for South Africa for the first time in Venezuela, I remember us having to buy like our national colors, like our blazers, and like, you know, paying for our Springbok colors. And I was just like, how does that work? You know, we're going overseas to compete and represent our country, and we have to pay for the clothing that we wouldn't wear unless we were going to represent a country, you know? So I think it we've never really got any backing from South Africa. So to me, it wasn't really surprising. But yeah, I think it's definitely opened bigger doors for me on the international scale with contracts and that. But yeah, from South Africa, it's heartbreaking to see for sure.
And Tristan, I presume that the season's been cancelled this year.
Yeah, so it's been, well, I wouldn't say cancelled, it's been postponed, but I think they're being real optimistic about it. I think if we're lucky, we're just going to have 2 events this year that might not even count. It won't count, I don't think, as for a world title. It'll just be, to give the fans something to watch and bring back the excitement before we kick off in 2021.
But in a sort of positive note, you almost get to be the defending world champion for an extra year.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is. I don't think it's nothing I'd really accept, but yeah, it's until 2021, I think, and I think it was actually really good for me to be able to rest after such a crazy year and just reset. I'm actually looking forward to just free surfing and being home for a full winter, which I haven't been home for a full winter in like 5 years. So, and the waves are best in South Africa in winter. So I'm just looking forward to spending time at home and just chasing swells up and down the coastlines with friends and just enjoying it for the reason I fell in love with it in the beginning,
Isn't it bloody cold though in winter?
Yeah, it's cold, man, but I don't know. I don't think we really care about the cold when we see good waves. I think that all just goes, out the window.
And Tristan, sort of, if looking over the next 5 years or 10 years, I mean, you're still only 22. What do you think the future holds for you? A multiple world champion?
Yeah, so I mean, that's the plan. That's something that I'm going to keep working towards. I've learned a lot through the last 5 years of being on tour. And I'm just looking really forward to, there's some things that I get to work on now, and especially now that I've had this year off, I've got to work on my riding quite a bit. And I'm just excited to go back and compete and chase more world titles for sure. That's definitely my next plan. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we can build your fan base through whatever media we can get, and everybody will be supporting you going into 2021.
Yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate all the support I get already, even though the officials in South Africa might not be behind us, but a lot of the citizens are. And that support is, that's something that really helps us a lot when we're overseas competing. And, it becomes really stressful, and just to see that, people appreciate us putting on a show, it's really enjoyable. So I thank everyone for that, for sure.
I'm sure the whole of South Africa is very proud that you are the world champion. Tristan, it's been awesome chatting to you today on Sport SA Daily Diary. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck with the couple of days, or the 6 or 7 days in lockdown. I hope it goes quickly.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm doing everything to keep sane, but thanks for taking some of my time. I really appreciate it, and it's good to chat to you, Adam.
We look forward to seeing you out on circuit again next year, or if not before.
Thank you. Cheers.
Look out for tomorrow's episode of Sport SA Daily Diary, where we chat to the man behind the logistics of the Springboks.